Welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. Hope you guys are all having a phenomenal Wednesday, September 14th. And how sweet it is. The Pirates and the Steelers are 5-0 in Cincinnati in the last 4 days as the Pirates wrapped up the series today with a series sweep over the Cincinnati Reds, their first four-game series sweep in a very long time. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but we're also going to have Jeff Carr and Stephen Offenbaker from Locked On Reds on tomorrow to recap the series and talk about a plethora of other things. But on today's episode, to Mailbag Wednesday. You guys submitted your questions as you always do every single Wednesday to be featured here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And we got a different kind of questions going on a little bit today, but we'll get into that just here in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Chew. More on them later in the episode today. Make sure you also follow this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pirates or follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. And with that said, let's get into today's episode, everybody.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Pirates podcast. I hope you guys are all having a phenomenal Wednesday, September 14th. I know I am after watching this Pirates team play the way they did against the Cincinnati Reds all through those 4 games. And we're going to get into that today, as well as answering your questions, a part of Mailbag Wednesday. But to keep things light about the Pirates Red series, they finish up a series sweep against the Cincinnati Reds 10-4. I believe this was the last time these teams will meet. No, it is not. They will meet in Pittsburgh near the end of the month. But absolute domination from this Pirates team in this series. They win 6-3 on Monday, 6-1 in the doubleheader yesterday, 1-0 in the second game of the doubleheader, and then 10-4 today. And realistically, it was the home run ball that propelled this team through this series. Today, you got a Rodolfo Castro home run, O'Neal Cruz home run. A lot of the other runs that were sprinkled in there were, of course, runs that were a big part of those home runs. But the home run ball was very big for this Pirates team. They now only sit about a game and a half back of the Reds. Something that I think that the Pirates should be looking towards with these young guys. Catch up to the Reds. Don't finish last in the division this year. I think that's something that, for the team's sake, would be very nice to move forward with. But very impressive display all around. Tomorrow, of course, the Pirates will be on national TV against the New York Mets, where they will be in New York for 6 games, 4 against the Mets and 2 against the Yankees. Again, in regards to the Cincinnati Red Series, you will get all of this and more on tomorrow's episode. And then on Friday, of course, we'll be recapping the nationally televised game against the Mets and taking a look at the rest of the weekend for that. But you know, it's a Mailbag Wednesday, so we're going to get into that stuff today. And Pitt Panther, as always, with the really fun questions. Should the Pirates think about shutting down Will Crowe for the rest of the year? He looks absolutely gassed. And at this point, I think it's just best to make sure he's healthy for 2023. Now, I agree with you that he does look like he is tired, and it's something that the Pirates should flirt with doing, yes. But they don't really have a plethora of arms to throw out there. Now, we saw Luis Ortiz last night have a very good outing. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Luis Ortiz back up for him to get some bullpen stints like we saw with Roansy Contreras earlier in the year. Luis Ortiz, by the way, according to MLB.com's transaction page, was sent back down to AAA Indianapolis after his cameo start. It's what I predicted yesterday. It's what I thought would happen yesterday, even though I did get his prediction very wrong. He impressed me a lot with the velocity on that fastball. But Will Crowe, we'll see. I think it's more plausible if David Bednar does come back, which I know David Bednar also just had a rehab assignment start in Indianapolis yesterday. Not a start, but an appearance. So we'll see what happens there. I agree with you that he should be shut down, and I want him to be completely healthy going into 2023. But also at this point, you got about 20 games left on the schedule. see if you can ride it out with him. See if you can give him some extended rest every once in a while. Like if he pitches, give him 3 or 4 days off rather than having him pitch 2 out of 3 days and stuff that we've seen from Will Crow throughout the year. And I don't think that it'll affect him too much going into 2023. I think he'll work on his craft a lot more out of the bullpen coming into 2023. I think he'll also have a good chance to be completely healthy. And I think he definitely should be on the 40-man out of the bullpen. He's shown that he has good stuff in the bullpen this year. I think it fits well for him. And it's starting to make that Josh Bell trade not look as bad as we initially thought when Will Crow was starting and not performing very well at all. You do look at the arms again that I mentioned. There's just not a lot there. Robert Stevenson, Manny Benuelos. I mean, there's not a lot in the bullpen right now that says shut down Will Crow, because then what's going to happen is these other guys are going to get gassed and it's not going to end well, which is why I put a lot of emphasis on the starting pitchers to continue to have these good starts like we saw in this series from Contreras, Ortiz, Oviedo, and others. It was very welcoming to see these guys go 5 or 6 innings and give the bullpen a little bit of a break. But it was also nice to see the offense back them up. And that's what I would like to see Will Crow do now, is instead of coming in those high leverage situations, come in games like this where you saw Miguel Yajure pitch 3 innings near the end of this game today because it was out of reach for the most part, because as I mentioned before, the Cincinnati Reds offense is not that good. Do that with Will Crow. Have him pitch in situations that are not exactly the big important situations. You know what I mean? I think that would be very good for him moving forward. And then I also want to get into some of the funnier questions before we move to break. Over under 10 games before Josh Van Meter is recalled from AAA. Well, I'm going to take the over because I don't think he's going to be recalled, period. I think Rodolfo Castro has just swept this team away with his performance. I think I've really enjoyed what I've seen from Rodolfo Castro. I think he has locked himself into that spot. You saw Tucupino Marcano get sent down because of how well he's playing. We'll see. I just don't see Josh Van Meter being called back up. I love Madris. Will I ever find love? And Reznavi said no. Well, if you're a Pirates fan, you might find love in the fact that in 2023, this team is going to be leaps and bounds better than they are right now. I don't say that they're going to be a playoff contender, but they're definitely going to be a much better baseball team with a lot more sustainability and a lot more consistency in their lineups, hopefully, which I've seen comments about it. I get it. It's just something that you're going to have to live with for the rest of 2022. But moving into 2023, I would very much expect this team to be a lot more consistent, a lot more sustainable, and playing better baseball. So you'll find love in that. Now, as far as your love life outside of that, I can't really speak to it too much. But once that love life comes back, maybe you should check out Blue Chew. Blue Chew, of course, great product. Summer's winding down. The nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. That's right. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life. That's especially true in the bedroom, especially when it's time to step up to the plate. That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises, like Rodolfo Castro. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of our licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the United States and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. With Blue Chew, men everywhere are excited to see the postman, because when your package has arrived, your package has arrived. They always say first impressions are important, but what about lasting impressions? It's time to get off the couch and back to work. If your tool needs an upgrade, head to bluechew.com. They say there's nothing sexier than confidence, and Blue Chew can help you find confidence where it counts. So if you can benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it. I love Madris, and we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code Locked On at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code Locked On, to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information, and we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. So as always, guys, thank you for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast. I have been keeping the episodes shorter because it does seem like you guys are enjoying the shorter episodes. I'm enjoying the shorter episodes because I feel like I'm not ranting as much, but it definitely feels like you guys are enjoying them as well. I've seen the watch time go up, so I'm glad to hear that. Old Dirty Boat with 3 questions today, which are going to wrap up the podcast with his 3 questions. Looks like starting pitching is a need again next year. Looking at the list of free agents, which I talked about this the other day, here are a few names that are interesting. Kyle Gibson, Sean Manaea, Jameson Taillon, Mike Clevenger. I would love to see Taillon come back, but any of these guys would be solid additions. Am I missing someone? Are these guys expensive to our Buccos? Should I look forward down the farther down the list? The dumpster diving has to come to an end sometime, right? Ben Cherington talked on the radio with the fan the other day saying that he wants to make this team better in 2023. The way that you are going to do that is by improving the starting pitching staff. Roansy Contreras and Mitch Keller are your 2 guys that you can definitively say will be a part of this rotation next year. JT Brubaker, making a case. Zach Thompson and Bryce Wilson, not so much. Johan Oviedo, I don't see him as a starter. I still see him as a reliever, but we'll see what we get from him. Luis Ortiz impressed me last night. I think he has a shot to get there. You're then including Michael Burrows. You're then including Quint Priester, Carmen Mlodzinski, Cody Bolton, Tanaj Thomas. There's a lot of pitchers that are going to be available that could come up in 2023. The reason I want to put such an emphasis on getting quality starting pitching is that so that these guys don't feel rushed when they're getting called up. I want them to feel like, okay, I can come up and be comfortable as the 4th or the 5th guy in the rotation, not a top 3 guy in the rotation. Now, I would like to see them eventually develop into a top 3 rotation guy because that would be phenomenal, but it's also very, very hard to find those guys all the time. Just ask the Pirates. They've seen it. I mean, it took Mitch Keller 3 years to get to the point that he's at now. So you bring up Jameson Taillon, Sean Manaea, Kyle Gibson, Mike Clevenger. Based off of history, I would say that that's too far out of the realm for the Pittsburgh Pirates to think about. I think those guys are just too far out of their financial range. But I do agree with you. When does the dumpster diving end? Who knows? But you also have to look at it from the fact that people consider that they were dumpster diving for Jose Quintana and Tyler Anderson. Those guys ended up turning into quality trade chips at the deadline, and Quintana's playing well in St. Louis. Tyler Anderson played well in Seattle, and he's now playing well in Los Angeles. So the Pirates know how to find these guys. They know how to improve these guys and make them good quality veteran pitchers. But when do you start giving these guys 2 to 3 year deals? When do you start giving these guys deals that are going to mean, okay, I have security in the organization for at least 2023? Then I can offload these guys in 2024 if I feel fit. Or you get a Jose Quintana or a Tyler Anderson type player, and they pan out the same way like we've seen the last 2 years. But because you have them on a 2-year deal, you don't feel the pressure to trade them away. Because when you're on a 1-year deal and you perform like Quintana has, I know he said he loved Pittsburgh, but is he really going to come back at a price tag the Pirates are going to like? Probably not. Throw 2 years, $20 million at a quality starter, and I guarantee you they're going to have no issues playing under $10 million on a contract. They're not going to. And it's only going to make this team better. Pitching is going to be the emphasis of this team the entire offseason. You saw it in the draft. It was an emphasis in the draft. You saw it in last year's draft. It was an emphasis. Make it an emphasis in free agency and make this team better now with starting pitching that will be available. Now, what I will say, a lot of the better options starting pitching-wise that are out there are guys that are under player options or arbitration and stuff like that, so we'll have to wait for that to come out and see how that happens. What I'm also not opposed to is the Pirates using some of these prospects that they don't think are going to fit or won't have a timeline. Trade them for starting pitching. There's always guys that want out of their current situations or teams that want to trade starting pitching for quality prospects. Do it. It doesn't hurt. As long as you don't do anything like the Chris Archer trade again, it doesn't hurt. And I know that still stings on the side of Pirates fans, but Why not trade a Travis Swaggerty or G1 Bay type for a quality starter? You haven't given either guy a fair shake anyway. Throw another prospect in there. You could get a top 3 starter in your rotation with those 3 guys as paired into a trade, I believe. And there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking to trade starting pitching. The Rays always do. The Athletics do. The Guardians always do. There's a lot of teams that are going to want to trade starting pitching. The Marlins are definitely going to be one of those teams as well with the emergence of Edward Cabrera and a lot of the guys that they have there. Maybe go get a Pablo Lopez. You never know. There's a lot of different options that the Pirates have there, but I do agree with you. They do need to start elevating the talent that they do bring in from free agency, but I also understand that the Pirates have shown me no reason to say they can't find these guys in the diamonds in the rough that are going to cost a little bit less, but extend them instead of 1 year, give them those 2-year deals that'll also give that guy security and you security at the end of the day. He also has another question. Looks like Blake Sabol hasn't missed a beat since his promo to AAA. Do you add him to the 40-man this offseason since he's Rule 5 eligible? At the minimum, he's a nice bench piece who looked like a serviceable catcher when I saw him in Altoona. Blake Sable's one of those guys I definitely think gets kind of lost in the fold of the outfielders right now that are available. And we also just saw Bly Madris get taken off of the 40-man roster and designated for assignment because of the amount of outfielders that the Pirates already have at their disposal. I do think Sabol might just be one of those guys the Pirates are just going to have to hope doesn't get selected in the 40-man or in the Rule 5 draft. Mainly because you look at what they have right now, you're talking about Brian Reynolds, you're talking about Jack Sawinski, you're talking about Cal Mitchell, you're talking about Caden Smith and Jigba, you're talking about the opportunity of Tucupita Marcano coming back up and playing some outfield work. You're talking about Diego Castillo doing the same thing. They have a lot of options in the outfield, and it's not very feasible to keep that many options in the outfield unless they are all high-end quality talent. 4 is usually a good number because you'll have the 3 that you go to every day, and then you'll have a solid platoon. This is also excluding the fact that Ben Gamble has a real shot to come back to this team and be an Energizer bunny off of the bench. So then you're talking about 5 outfielders. I don't know if they add Blake Sabol as a 6th, especially because you're going to have other guys that are going to be clamoring for time in the outfield that are going to come up in 2023. Matt Frazier, Connor Scott. There's a lot of different guys that are going to come up eventually and make an impact. And even after that, you're talking about Lolo Sanchez. You're talking about Lonnie White Jr. You're talking about a lot of different guys. Sabol is very good. He's played well in the minors this season. Has he done enough to warrant getting a 40-man spot that is going to take up a spot in the outfield that could otherwise be used at another area like pitching, which has been an issue, or an area like the first base that the Pirates are going to probably explore when the time comes to have Michael Chavis in a platoon. Maybe you bring up Sabol to platoon with Chavis. That's also something the Pirates could flirt with. I just don't know if I would give him that spot. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's feasible to give him a 40-man spot. I understand he's Rule 5 eligible. Does he get selected in the Rule 5 draft? It's the lottery pick that you take with these kind of guys. And the Pirates are going to have to be very selective about a lot of the guys that they end up protecting and a lot of the guys that they end up moving on with. So I would warrant no, but I do think there is a possibility he could be on the 40-man and then get designated for assignment and then get sent back to AAA. Before we wrap up today's episode, let's take a look ahead because, again, we are recapping the Red Series with Locked On Reds tomorrow. The Pirates, as I mentioned earlier, will be on Fox against the New York Mets, and it start a 4-game set against the Mets and then 2 games against the Yankees. Moving into next week, they then play the Cubs in a 4-game series, the Reds in a 3-game series, and then the Cardinals to wrap up the season in 6 straight games, 3 at PNC Park, 3 at Busch Stadium. We'll see how it all pans out for the Pirates. I don't think they're going to lose 100 games. It won't make that much of a difference anyway. But you also look at the how the playoffs are shaping up right now, and in the American League, in the wild card, which is always the intrigue, Toronto Tampa Bay and Seattle all pretty much have the same record. Baltimore, of course, has fallen on pretty much not having the talent to keep up. At 5 games back, the White Sox and the Twins are 6.5 and 8.5 back. Write those guys off, I would say. So far, there's only 5 teams eliminated from the playoffs so far. You got the Reds, the Pirates, the Nationals, the Tigers, and the A's. So a lot of teams could still say they have a chance, but obviously, looking at the National League, the Giants are 10 games back. I just don't see them catching up. Arizona's 11.5 back, nix them. Colorado and Chicago and Miami 17, 18, 20 games back, nix those guys. The NL wild card, a little more interesting because the Braves have a substantial lead in that department. They're fighting with the Mets for the NL East. Right now, the Phillies, 1.5 games on San Diego. Milwaukee's creeping. They have 2 games behind on San Diego. That's going to be interesting to watch down the stretch. Now, of course, the Yankees are probably going to win the American League East. The Guardians and the White Sox kind of still fighting for that AL Central crown. The Twins 5.5 back. Houston's going to win the NL West. Seattle, of course, 13 games back. Texas and the Athletics and Angels all out of it. You're going to probably get 3 teams from the National League East: the Mets, the Braves, and the Phillies. Cardinals are probably going to run away with the NL Central unless they have a massive collapse. And then the Dodgers, of course, already clinched the NL West and are almost at 100 wins. That's how baseball looks right now. That's what's ahead for the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to recap the Thursday night game and look ahead to the weekend on Friday for the New York Mets game. We're going to talk with Locked On Reds hosts Jeff Carr and Stephen Offenbaker about this series on tomorrow's episode. Thank you guys for always bringing in your questions for Mailbag Wednesday. Also, shout out to the Pittsburgh Pirates for getting a 4-game sweep against the Cincinnati Reds. I am your host, Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates. Go make sure you go check out Locked On MLB with your pal Sully. He has everything you need to know about the major leagues from past, present, and future, and talks about it every single day. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I am Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. And with that said, guys, I will see you tomorrow for a Locked On crossover.